Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Melissa Andrade, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Datamite. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for our webinar on the latest update of our Quality Planning Studio software and how we are supporting the new AIAG VDA standard. We will have a 35 to 40-minute presentation given by Chris Ackerman, one of our solutions engineers here at Datamite. This will be followed by 15 minutes of time for any questions you may have. At this point, we'll bring in more of our solution engineers, including Vicki Peary, and I also have Bob Bauer here to assist in sharing and answering these questions. The audio capability is turned off for you while you're joining us today. If you have specific questions, we ask that you utilize the GoToWebinar chat feature or questions. You can also request follow-up so that one of our solution experts can follow up with you and address any specific requirements you may have. This webinar is recorded, and you will receive a link to it afterwards in case you need to leave us early. And as a short company intro, I'd like to point out that Datamite has over 40 years of experience in the quality management space with hardware and software solutions to address many quality areas. We consider ourselves total quality experts. Starting with the quality planning, we help you manage your APQP process, meet industry standards, and integrate with your SPC to expedite response time to your quality data. We have extensive ability to collect your factory floor production and audit data through fixed station and mobile with our data collectors and torque wrenches and the software behind that. Most importantly, we offer strong reporting capabilities to manage a closed-loop quality improvement process utilizing dashboards, alerts, and notifications. Our next webinar, which is on February 13th, will focus on reporting in our data metrics data collection SPC solution. We have an exciting year coming up here at Datamite with new data collection products launching soon, so stay tuned. At this point, I will turn it over to Chris Ackerman to start our presentation for today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Melissa. Today's presentation is going to focus in on one of our solutions, the Quality Planning Studio. QPS, as we call it, is a manufacturing planning and quality control tool that helps you with APQP documentation. You can see the process flow control plan and process failure modes and effects analysis. What we do is with our database, we're able to help you manage and control your manufacturing process with the risk control and the documentation production, and also the ability to identify those areas and those processes where you can improve and deliver the highest quality product possible. So today's focus is on our Quality Planning Studio, but also focusing a little bit closer in on the AIAG and the VDA harmonization standard. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means going forward and what happens to the risk priority number and the action prioritization. And then I'm going to actually walk you through some parts of the software. We've made some changes based on the harmonization with this new standard. So our Quality Planning Studio 8.4 has been updated to address this new standard, and I want to walk you through, show you some of the changes in the screens, how that then shows up in the documents, and then also want to talk a little bit about customer-specific requirements, because we are still trying to collect those from all of you, our users, and so we would love to be getting input from you in terms of those customer-specific requirements. And then I want to leave a few minutes at the end for questions, but please don't wait till the end to ask your question. If you have a question that comes up as you're watching the webinar, please go ahead and submit the question so that we can it'll get you at the front of the line if at all possible. All right. So let's take a look at a little bit of history here with the Process FMEA Failure Modes and Effects Analysis 4th edition, a document, a publication that was generated in June of 2008. And at that particular time, we had the calculation of the severity, occurrence, and detection being multiplied out to create a risk priority number. Now, over the years, that calculation of the risk priority number has morphed a little bit. Some customers would want a little bit different calculation, maybe a little extra weighting, for instance, on the severity times the occurrence, maybe severity times detection. So over the years, as these additional calculations have come about, we've actually also created a priority level, which is kind of a matrices between severity, occurrence, and detection. And this priority level has already been rolled into our software for a number of years now. So then in June of 2019, there's a new standard, a new manual was released from the AIAG, and that now has the FMEA process being restructured a little bit. The existing FMEAs that you may have developed over the years that are still in what would be the 4th edition will still be able to remain in their original format, including any revisions that you may have made in addition to those. When practical, existing FMEAs used as a starting point for new programs should be converted to reflect the new rating scales, analytical methods, and the formats. And then new processes and products should be made according to the new standard or the new manual. So what does that mean for us? And I realize that for some of you, this is maybe new information. What I'd like to do at this time is just take a quick poll, and we're going to put a poll up on the screen and allow you to vote and register your information for that. So, how many years have you been using our quality planning software? I want to give everybody a few minutes to pick their choice and then submit. How many years have you been using our quality planning software? At one time it was called Impact. It was also called PACT. If you used it a long, long time ago, it was called DCP. Or maybe you're new to the party and you haven't used any of them yet. We'd like to know that information from you as well. So how many years have you been using our quality planning software? I'll give everybody just a few more minutes.
And here are the results.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for submitting. And thank you, everybody. All right. Moving on now, I want to talk a little bit about this AIAG VDA FMEA update. And one of the areas that we're going to see something that's a little bit different is this risk priority number versus action priority or action prioritization. This is a table here that's showing all the intersections of severity, occurrence, and detection. And the reason for this emphasis on the action priority is, for instance, if you have a severity of 10, occurrence of 4, detection of 2, you would have a risk priority number of 80. Well, it's possible that RPN of 80 can, at this point, give you a high action priority. But let's suppose that we also have a risk priority number of 80, but it's structured a little bit differently. Severity of 8, occurrence of 5, and detection of 2 would now give us a medium priority for our action priority value. And then yet one more combination of 4 times 4 times 5, risk priority number is still 80, but this combination will now give us an action priority of L, or low value. So here we have the risk priority number of 80, 3 different instances, but depending on the weighting of the severity and the occurrence, we are getting the action priority values there of high, medium, and low. So what does that mean for the software? Well, the process FMEA is going to take the largest change or modification of the information, and there are now essentially 7 steps to follow as part of as part of creating this FMEA, if you will. So it's grouped a little bit into 3 areas: the system analysis with 3 steps, the failure analysis and risk mitigation with 3 more steps, and then risk communication, which will be the results documentation, generating that information to not just internally, but to all of the possible stakeholders as well. So let's take a look at what I'm going to do here today is kind of walk you through our software and show you where some of the changes are going to be. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with the different screens, but what I do want to show you is, for instance, where the bigger changes are going to take place. So for instance, for step number 1, planning and preparation, what happens on our main screen to address with this new standard? Well, we have created a new project setting called AIAG/VDA. If you are updating an existing database to the new level 8.4, your default value will be the previous project type of AIAG 4th edition. So any databases that are being upgraded to 8.4, the project type will default to a previous 4th edition value. So it would be then up to you to then go through and update those projects you wish to take to the next standard, to the VDA standard. And this is where you would do that. You would come here. We have a drop down, and that drop down will then take care of any of the 2 standards as well as DCP. So if you have been with our software for 25 plus years now, you would still be able to create the old dynamic control plans, the DCP working data sheets as well. But here's where you can toggle back and forth between the current standard, or I should say the previous standard, and now the new current standard here on the project setting of the first screen, the main screen. We also have added 2 more fields on the main screen. This is all still part of that planning and preparation, and this helps out with the scope of the project. So as we're creating this information for the project, these additional names looks a little bit like there might be some redundancy here in terms of what we're calling out. But for some of you who've been through the PAC training and the QPS training over the years, you may remember that we had a yo-yo example. And in that yo-yo example, we would try to show some of the manufacturing steps, some of the assembly steps, and some of the testing steps. Well, now, under this new umbrella of the FMEA, what we want to do now is, with our projects, focus the scope of the project a little bit tighter. So in this particular case, we're talking about a bearing ring pair, but we're going to call out the function of this grouping of information. This process item function will show that we're showing the manufacturing of the bearing ring pair, and we're also going to cover, in this particular case, in our scope, both the inner and the outer. So we're going to be capturing a pair, and we're calling that out with the process item and process item function. So main screen, updating for planning and preparation. We've got a couple of fields here to add new information, as well as our project settings that will allow us to go back and forth between the different standards. So moving on to step 2, we'll add a new column here with part of our process flow, which is called the process step function. The process step function is going to be a little bit more detail in terms of our process name and process numbering. So we've made that a little bit larger field for a little bit more detail of information. This will be on the process flow screen as well as the main screen for data entry of that. So step number 2, the structure analysis, is going to be an additional step for adding the information called process step function. Now, moving on to step number 3, we're taking a look at the process flow screen, and here's where we're going to bring in a little bit extra information as it relates to the characteristics. So as our characteristic library has been expanded, we've added 2 additional fields in the library that can now be populated either in the library or here on the process flow screen. Some of the information may be tied to the characteristic immediately and can be used in the library. It can also be tied to the process flow step at this particular point in your data entry. So step number 3 is adding the additional information here called the process work element type and the process work element function. So let's take a moment here to see what this is going to look like on the document. We've taken care of the data entry fields. Now let's see what we're doing on the document. So here's the header of the process FMEA. You'll see that the header information is calling out our scope, if you will, our planning and preparation. But we've also added this line item of the process item and the process item function as we move across. So that's the information that we entered on the main screen of the software that will now show up here on the documents. Step 2, which was the structure analysis, is the additional information, not only the process step, which we've had before, and that's familiar to everybody, but here's this additional line item of process step function that will be brought into this header, if you will, moving across this level of the document. And then the function analysis, step number 3, where we've added those 2 additional fields on the process flow screen. Function analysis will now incorporate, you'll see, the number of the characteristic as well as the work element type and the work element function. Okay, so there's kind of our starting point for the first 3 steps of our new FMEA process. Just another moment here to ask another poll and get some information from everybody at this time. Has anyone at your company received training on the new AIAG VDA standard? Simple yes or no. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just trying to get an idea as to how many people have had the training on that on the new standard. And just simple yes or no. Go ahead and submit your answers, please. Give everybody a few more seconds to do this. All right. And here we have our results. We thank everybody for submitting your answers. Okay, let's get back into the software and the documentation. We've worked our way through the first 3 steps of what we're calling the system analysis. We've taken care of planning and preparation, structure analysis, and the function analysis. Now we're moving into a grouping of 3 steps, steps 4, 5, and 6, failure analysis and risk mitigation. So let's take a look at these steps as well. Now, most of these steps are going to take place on the process FMEA data entry screen. So I've gone from our main screen into our process FMEA screen, and the layout of this is such that as we're adding a failure mode, we have the data entry box that will come up. You'll enter your failure mode, effects of failure mode, severity value. This is pretty much straightforward. Now, the heads up is going to be that when it comes to the documents, the effects and the failure mode are going to switch places. So we didn't, for this particular screen, swap the places. We're going to go ahead and keep the failure mode first, and the failure mode library functionality will still be there in this data entry box. The effects of failure mode will be added in the field next to that, and then your severity value, initial severity, going into the right side of the screen, and then the information will be saved. So that would take care of failure analysis. The next screen is going to show us the risk analysis, and here we're going to bring in the causes of failure, and we're going to add a new failure cause, and this information will be your potential cause of failure, your controls for the prevention of the cause, controls for the detection of the cause, or controls for detection of the failure, as well as your occurrence and detection values are being brought in there as well. So this is very similar to what we've currently had. We're just bringing this information into the data entry screen at this point, making it a little bit easier for our users to focus in on the information that we're asking for at this particular step, which is step number 5, the risk analysis. Let's move on now to step number 6. Step number 6 is where we're going to be starting to look at optimization or process improvement, or adding those recommended actions. So here we've now had another screen where we're bringing in the add new action. Here's where we're going to see a lot of the changes that are taking place with the new standard. The first field that we are calling recommended actions is actually being split into 2 fields now. More specific information is requested in terms of whether the action is a prevention action or a detection action. So if you are entering information that is going to be a prevention action, that would be the first column. And if you have existing information in the database, what we have done is we've made our default value be the prevention action. So if, for instance, you have an action that you've added back in your 4th edition, you will have to modify the information on this particular screen. And if you do, in fact, have a detection action, you would have to come in here and move that information to the next field there, where you now see detection action. We still have the same fields for responsible and actions taken. Where we do have a new field that's being added according to the standard would be the status, and you'll see that's a drop down there. And the drop down is going to have the 5 different statuses that you could have, and that's a new field completely. That was not on 4th edition, but that is now being included in the new standard. And then we still have the target date and effective dates. Those are date fields that will be populated with a date format, and will help you, pick a date off of a calendar format as you enter that. And then we have the three action results for the new, results from this implemented action. What you are entering here will still be calculated as a risk priority number in a way, because you're still putting in severity, occurrence, and detection just like you were before. But now you will have, as part of the document, you will have the AP column, which is for the action priority or action prioritization. There's also an additional field there for remarks. This is new. This can be added into the line item for the new action, and also a special characteristic can be entered for the line item of the new action as well. So a couple of new fields there that are making the document a little bit more robust as we add more information to our FMEA screens. So let's take a look now at what's going on with the document. Jumping back to the document, going back to step 4, the failure analysis, you'll see here that we still have a grouping of the failure effects, failure mode, and failure cause. But you'll notice now that the failure effects are to the left of the failure mode. So that's something completely new. For the data entry screen, we kept it the same format as before, the failure mode, and then the effects would be entered in that data entry box that I showed you a few minutes ago. But now you'll see the failure effect coming, and then the severity value, and then the failure mode, and then the failure cause will be coming into the failure analysis box on the screen there as well. Then moving over to the right, we see risk analysis. This is where we are bringing in the prevention controls, the detection controls, and you'll see that we also have a calculated field for the AP. And in this particular case, the calculation of the severity, occurrence, and detection are giving us the L, the low prioritization for action at this time. If we needed to, we could add a special characteristic as well, and then also we could have a filter code if we needed that to be added to the document as well. One more grouping of information, and this you can see has expanded quite a bit, and that's going to be optimization. So you can see how the action field has been split into two: prevention action and detection action. Responsible dates, or responsible parties, the target date, the status, and then the actions taken field, and then the additional fields that you see after that, moving all the way across to remarks. So this is where the real estate got a little bit more valuable on the document. You can see, for instance, that we have turned a couple of our fields vertical, so that we can get a little bit more information in. So maintenance, Bob, you'll see that the responsible field. What we did is we took those fields which we felt would be a minimal amount of data entry and flipped those sideways. Target date, status, you can see that those fields have been flipped on their sides. We also have, as part of optimization, if we had a new calculated action priority level of L, in this case, it's the same level. So probably would want to move your prioritization of action from a medium down to a low, or a high down to a medium. So in this particular example, we would probably start with something a little bit higher in terms of action priority, and then move that down into to a low priority. But this is just for an example of what the document's going to look like. And wanted to talk a little bit about something that's new, that's coming from the standard as well, is a different organization to the severity, occurrence, and detection information fields. So in the past, with 4th edition, we had the lookups, and I've gone ahead and circled on the menu where the lookups would be. So we click on the lookups tab, and then we have severity, occurrence, and detection. So you'll see now that for severity, it's formatted a little bit differently. We now have the severity value, the effect, and then we now have impacts to your plant, to the ship to plant, and impact to the end user. So those fields, those have been populated with information coming directly from the standard, from the document. There is now a new field for corporate examples, and this information would be developed by team leaders, perhaps within your organization, that would populate this information based on lessons learned or existing information that would help guide the quality engineers to determine from a corporate example what the severity values would be on a scale from 1 through 10. So we have this for the severity of risk, or the risk severity. We also have it for the risk occurrence, a little bit different format to the lookup. We have prediction, both measuring in parts or in time, or both, if a combination of those needs to be used to determine your occurrence value. And then also we've added, according to the standard, prevention control strength. So that's another column that is helping you not only determine the occurrence value, but also determine the prevention control that will be tied to the occurrence. And then we have yet another kind of the wild card field at the right for corporate examples, again, for population of examples for your company to go into this lookup file that would be stored for everyone to have access to. So here's for risk occurrence, and then we have one more that I wanted to show you for risk detection, columns for detectability, detection method maturity, opportunity for detection, and then yet another additional field for corporate examples. So if you're in the software and you are not sure whether it's a 9 or a 10, a 7 or an 8, hopefully you have this field as a reference point within your company, within your corporation, to be populated by other team members and colleagues that would provide you with information here to help you make a decision as to which value for severity, occurrence, and detection should be used for the particular entry that you're doing at that time. Right? So time for one more poll here. I've got another opportunity for us to just glean some information from everybody. And so want to just ask another poll here. Have your customers set deadlines for transition to the new FMEA format? Yes or no? Have any of your customers set deadlines for a transition to the new FMEA format with the new VDA harmonization we've been talking about? Give everybody a few minutes, a few seconds more to submit their answers. And we thank everybody for your participation with these answers. It helps us to allow you to have better information as we do these webinars based on the customers that are attending the webinars. Okay. And here's the results. And again, we thank you very much for your information and providing that to us. It helps us with information that we need for our webinars. All right, so we've walked through the 6 of the 7 steps so far. We've talked about the system analysis with the planning and preparation. That was an update to the main screen. Structure analysis, that's an update to the main screen for the process flow. And the function analysis is an update to the characteristic library information. We just talked about failure analysis and risk mitigation with our failure analysis on the process FMEA screen, where we're adding the failure information. Again, remember the flip-flop from the effects and the mode, kind of switching places on the document. The risk analysis, pretty much straightforward. We need to still be entering a cause of failure with occurrence and detection values. So we are still putting in that severity, occurrence, and detection value. But when we get to optimization, this is where we have that those new sets of fields for action priority, action prioritization, and have that information being calculated as to high, medium, or low. And then we have one more area that we'd like to talk about today, and that's going to be the results documentation. So what we've done now is we've allowed for this additional field that we've been talking about, this action priority. And for those of you who've been familiar with our RPN analysis report, this is a report that's part of the report menu bar, and this allows you to create a query of your projects and glean in the information for your calculations. And so you see here that we've added a new column for action priority for your risk analysis. That's in addition to what we've had before. So you can see the risk priority number is still being calculated. Priority level is still being calculated, but now we have that new, and that is our primary focus of the RPN analysis document now is the action priority. We've added a couple of more fields here to group and filter, filter by and group by action priority, and so those fields have been added to our query screen as well. As we move into the results documentation, we want to take just a moment here to talk about our interpretation of the standard, if you will. We know that the internal and customer reporting is essential for summarizing and communicating the results of the activity. And I know for a lot of people with the standard, it's, well, how much more work is it going to generate for me? And the flip side of this is that if we do a really good job of documenting the results, then hopefully with lessons learned, with the sharing of the information, we gain time because we're not redoing all a number of FMEAs over and over again. We're making all of the systems in our company more robust with this information. But the important thing is to be communicating this information and in the form of the documentation. So this is what we've brought into the software is the data, the documents are being stored securely with our SQL Server database. So this is a more robust database that allows us to add a large number of projects within the database and allow for a larger number of grouping of information, of data being stored. And this also allows for, I showed you with that very first screen, we will still always be able to have any documents that we created with the previous standard. So if you have FMEAs that are still able to be legacy reports from the previous standard, we're not going to make those go away. Those will still be available in the same, the same condition that you had them before. But you now have the support of the expanded fields and the mainly in those analysis fields that have been added. So you will have those fields showing on your screen. You can choose to take advantage of those fields with the new format. But if you're generating a legacy document, that new information would not be printed. So if you're using 4th edition still, a lot of the fields that we talked about, those newer fields, would not be necessary to have to be populated. So again, remember there on that first, the main screen, we have the option of switching back and forth if you need to between the 4th edition FMEA and the new VDA version as well. And our strategy here was to generate as an output a PDF report at 8.5 by 11 inches. So as we've taken a lot of that information that's been added to the standard, our primary focus to start here is to have that document still fit into an Adobe Acrobat output with a PDF and 8.5 by 11 inches as a starting point. Now, one thing that we've had in our software here for a couple of releases now is the ability to store those documents as attachments to any project in the database. So if you have documents that you are creating or additional documents that you need to use as part of your risk communication, you can have that information attached as a document here to the to any of the projects that you have. So from your home menu, we have what we call project diagrams. That will take you to this screen here, where any document that you have can then be attached to a particular project. So if you have external information that you are bringing in to use for your decisions in adjusting the occurrence value, say from a 5 down to a 3, and you want to show essentially the proof with your reporting of those documents, those can be attached here for easy reference, so that as your team is working in a particular project, they can have quick access to those, those documents for the essential feedback loop that's coming, from step 7 here. So just wanted to point out that we do have that information for you in our software at this time, and any documents can be attached there, but most importantly, any of these documents that we're creating as part of our results can be stored and attached within the particular projects that you're working on. So what we'd like to at this time is ask for if you have any specific formats or requirements with the new standard, we are open to understanding those requirements for future releases. We know that it's still early with the timeline with the standard, so that's essentially why we've been asking some of the polling questions as to how many people are getting maybe a new set of customer-specific requirements to address with this particular format. So we are open to having you, contact with us and in letting us know what your customers are requiring of you with this new standard that's being implemented. So if something doesn't look exactly right that your customer's asking for, please be sure to let us know so we can begin to accumulate that information and address it in future releases. So we've walked through the 7 steps. We've kind of walked you through the different points in the software where these changes are taking place, and the screen, the data entry screens where the modifications are taking place, and then where the information is then produced on that process FMEA report. And then we've also given you a couple of options in terms of if you need to still generate a legacy document with the previous standard, you would still be able to do that with the QPS software. So we are not trying to dictate a timeline to you. We are giving you both options as you continue on with the upgrade to the software. So at this time, I want to open up the field to questions. I hope that many of you have been submitting the questions as we've gone along here, and I will toss it back to Melissa and Vicki to see how we're doing.
Thank you, Chris. That was really wonderful. This is Vicki. I'm one of the solutions engineers, and we've gotten a lot of questions, so I'm going to apologize if I don't get to yours in this session. We will reach out to you if we are unable to answer that question right now and provide you with an answer. Several of you are asking us about how to get the new version of QPS when you're running an older version like Impact.
The easiest way to do that would be to contact us. When we send out information, we are always trying to make sure that we're letting people know that we have the update available, but we might not have the most current information. So if you're out there and you would like to see what has to happen to get to the 8.4 release, we would love for you to contact us, and we'll have somebody get in touch with you in terms of the steps that have to happen after that.
Thank you, Chris. That clarified that one for us. I have another question that's been raised, still Vicki, by the way. Can our QPS software integrate with other Datamite products?
Yes, as a matter of fact, if you were watching the last webinar which we did, which seems like it was a full decade ago, but it was actually in December, we had a webinar for the integration between Quality Planning Studio and our Datametrics SPC software. So that would be an example of information that you could go back to and get from our library. And if you have any additional questions after you view that pre-recorded webinar, we'd be happy to answer those as well. But yes, you can integrate between QPS and Datametrics, and our future integration is going to be between QPS and our Gauge and Tool Management software. And so we're continuing to create those different levels of integration between all of the different possible data silos that might be existing, not just the data silos of our products, but the other data silos that you have as part of quality, that entire quality environment.
Hi, Chris. This is Diane. I'm another solutions engineer. And I have a question. How much more work is the new standard?
That is a very good question. Now, I just kind of gave you the quick answer here in terms of how many extra fields we have to populate. But if we embrace the idea of what the entire standard is trying to do, we can make life a lot easier for everybody at the company, all of our colleagues together. For instance, I know that I've talked with one of our users on the phone recently, and with the new standard, what he's doing, he's creating a more robust failure mode library, and he's going through, he's putting all of the error codes that they would have from their manufacturing processes in the failure mode library, and allowing that to be the first source of information.
Thank you, Chris.
To those error
I have
codes.
one more question, and I'll get out of your hair.
Okay.
Can I get the AP to print on the old format?
We've gone around with this quite a bit, and this is where we need information from all of you. At this point in time, we've chosen not to put action priority or action prioritization on the old format. We want to kind of have that line in the sand where you can toggle back and forth if you need to, but the old version will not have it. The new version will have it. So at this point in time, the AP will not be on the old format.
This is Vicki again, Chris. I have a related question that's come up. Can I still have the RPN print on the new format?
Again, this is kind of the opposite of the question we just had, but risk priority number printing on the new format, the standard has moved us away from that risk priority number. We are still calculating it with severity, occurrence, and detection, so it's possible you would still have that calculated value. At this point in time, though, we've chosen not to put the RPN on the new format. It would be available for you if you went back to your old format. It will still be calculated as before. It will be on the data entry screen, so you'll be able to see it as a reference point. But in terms of actually printing on the new format, at this point in time, we've chosen not to do that.
That's excellent, Chris. Thank you. Another one of our customers has asked, why does the header information in PAC look different than the new AIAG standards book?
Another excellent question. We started with the standard that was published in June of 2019, the book coming from the AIAG, and we use that as our starting point. And one of the things that we discussed was getting that new information and those core elements into the report headers. So we're looking for input from our users, what they need and what they require and what their customers require. So we kind of wanted to have one point where we started with kind of the basic core information, and we'll see what we need to do going from there.
Okay, Chris, I lied. I'm back. It's Diane. When will the QPS Cloud version get updated? When will the QPS Cloud version?
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good question for me to answer too. This is one of those where we can essentially do it at any time. What we need to do is be in contact with individuals from the different user bases, because that's one of those things we don't want to just do it automatically and have everybody maybe perhaps be confused if they haven't had any training. What I've been seeing is that a lot of our users have been scheduling training, and then we are scheduling the updating of the database around the training so that when they open it up to this new version, we are trying to minimize the confusion. So in terms of the QPS Cloud, it takes very little time to actually do that, but we don't want to do it unless everybody at the company is ready for it, because we're trying to avoid extra surprises, I guess you could say.
All right, Chris, this is Vicki again. Here's another question from a customer. They're asking about the difference between the database view and the form view in QPS.
And that is yet another great question. What we have done as kind of our starting point is we know there's multiple formatting options. If you were to look at the back of the stand, there are all kinds of ways that this new information can be reported in different formats. So some of the formats are what the actual document would print like, and then some of them are going to be what the software would be for data entry. So as our starting point, our starting line point, if you will, is we've tried to go with a user interface for the software application, and then have, at this point in time, we have one of the form formats to give the example of the process FMEA printout and generate that in a PDF format. So our developers are ready to add new displays in the software, as well as with the formats of the printed forms, the printed reports as well. So it's an ongoing. This is not a one and done release for sure. We are looking forward to adding all of those variations that people might be coming across. But at this point in time, what we want to do, we want to see which is maybe the preferred format for everybody, or if there's one preference over the other, we want to be educated on that from our users.
Chris, this is Vicki again. I do have one last question to ask you. There are other questions that have been posed where we're going to reach out in a more private session to discuss with our customers. But we've been asked, is there a requirement to move to the new standard?
Yeah, see, that is not going to come from us as a software company. We are not going to require you to go to this new format or not. We are going to give you the tool that lets you produce a document in that format if you need it. But as far as Datamite is concerned, it's up to your customers, not us. So we would like for everybody to get to the 8.4 version so that they will be flexible to address both sides of that fence if you need to. But in terms of us as a software company, we have no control over requiring people to use this new standard or not. So again, very good question. We're not going to turn off the 4th edition because you might need documents from that going into the future. So our policy has always been to keep your old formats and then just continue to add new formatting as we see fit. I hope I answered the question with that.
Thank you, Chris. This is Melissa again, and I would like to thank you for your presentation today, along with our panel of solution engineers and answering questions, and everyone for participating. And as Vicki mentioned, we'll be reaching out directly to others that had more specific or technical questions so that we can answer those in the best manner. And wish everyone a great weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Don't forget our next webinar.
Yes, and our next webinar, we are presenting on data metrics reporting on Thursday, February 13th at 1 p.m. And watch for the invites on that and learn all about the great functionality within data metrics. Thanks so much.